Now that you know why the web is different, let's talk about writing headlines. So studies have shown that people can look or they can read, but they can't look and read at the same time. For example, when you're driving down the street and you see a billboard or sign, all you're doing is looking. So if they have a lot of writing on that billboard, you're not going to be able to read it. And when you're reading a book, you're so focused on reading that you can't really see anything else that's happening. So you want to keep that in mind when you're writing for the web. When someone first comes to your page, all they're doing is looking. Just like we saw in the previous lesson, they're clicking on your page, they're quickly scrolling to scan before they decide to read. So it's important that we catch their attention and make them want to read before they actually start reading. One of the ways you can do this is by writing catchy headlines throughout the page. So instead of writing one long story, break it up by having headlines in between. Take a look at this example from an About page that we did for Mel Robbins. As you scroll down the page, you can really see the points that we're making, and it gives you a gist of what our story is about, what we're saying, without having to read the entire site. Also see how it doesn't give the whole story away. It almost intrigues you enough that you want to see what happens without giving you the whole story. This is exactly what you want to do with your headlines. So here are some great tips on how to write great headlines. First, be specific. Take a look at this example. On the left, you see something general, save time by delegating. On the right, you see something specific, the 4-hour work week. Using numbers is a great way to catch people's attention. A few other examples of this would be 3 books that I love, or 3 steps on doing this. So try to be specific as possible in your headlines. 2, don't give away the whole story in the headline. Remember, the headline is just supposed to catch your attention so that they'll want to read the story. Here on the left, you see, living like a drug addict by being your authentic self can make you a better leader. We're pretty much giving away the whole story here. They don't even have to read the rest of the story. It's not catchy enough for people to want to read the rest. What you want to do is just raise the question and not answer it. Now take a look at this example on the right. Great leaders live like drug addicts. It makes you question, right? What? Great leaders live like drug addicts? How? Why? It makes you want to read the rest of the story. Take a look at this example. This is the title of one of the best-selling books of all time, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. This title alone probably sold millions of books. Imagine this book was titled, How to Not Care What People Think. It's probably not as intriguing. The reason why this is such a perfect headline is the use of every word in the headline. Instead of saying, not care what people think, he said, not giving a fuck. Also, instead of saying how not to or how to, he said, the art of. So it makes it seem like there's an art to it. It makes it seem like there's something special about it. And the best part is the word subtle. By saying the subtle art of not giving a fuck, it really makes it seem like there's something delicate, there's some secret to this that you can't find anywhere else. So those are 3 tips you can use to improve your headlines. Here's a couple more. Listen for keywords from your audience. One of my clients, Allison, who's a life coach, kept hearing the same word from her clients, stuck. Everyone kept saying to her, I feel stuck, my life feels stuck. So she used this word in her copy. She said, how to get unstuck and live your life. Make big promises. My client Mel Robbins uses, you're one decision away from a totally different life. Now that may not be true for everyone, but it is a possibility. Remember, you're not selling anything in the headline. All you're doing is catching people's attention, so they'll read the rest of the story. Now let's go into some examples of headlines for each section of the story. Here's some example headlines for the hook. The secret that all drug addicts know. This is what I call the myth-truth headline. And you can use words like the secret to, or the truth behind. It makes you feel like there's something that you should know that you don't, and it makes you want to find out. Your life is about to change forever. Again, this ties into the bold promise. When somebody says your life is about to change forever, you definitely want to know more. Close your eyes, picture your dream wedding. This might be something from a wedding planner or wedding photographer. It really plays into the audience's desire. It makes them want to be in that world. Does your website sound like you? This is something maybe for a copywriter or any kind of writer. By asking a question like this, it makes the audience say, yes, I want that, and I want to read more. Now let's look at some headline examples for premise. I used to lie all the time. This is a headline that I used to use in one of my stories. For the premise section, you really want to show your weakness. You really want to show the worst version of yourself, because this is the struggle part of your story. So by me saying, I used to lie all the time instead of I used to pretend all the time, it actually intrigues people to want to find out more. At age 23, I wanted to get high and stay high. This is the headline that we used for one of our clients. Again, it really shows the worst version of him, which is what we want to do. Trust me, I've been there. This is a great headline to use if you're a coach, you're a teacher, you're trying to teach somebody a lesson that you learned yourself. Because in the hook, you talk about all of the audience pains and all the audience problems. And right after you list all of those, you can say, hey, trust me, I've been there too. Now let's look at trigger. You'll see examples of each section throughout these slides. I'll just pick out a few to elaborate on. For the trigger, you want this to be a transitional headline. So it's taking you from one thing from before to the next. This is a perfect one. Until one day, I got a call from a client. So that headline presumes that something happened before, until this day happened. As you can see, all of these examples are transitional. It all talks about something that happened before and something that's about to happen. This really gets the reader to want to see what happens next. Now, here are some examples for the outcome part of your story. So this is the beginning of the climax of your story. One of the ones that I love to use is this line. You'll never believe what happened next. When you say something like that, people have to know what happened next. Another example here is fast forward 3 months or fast forward X months, because sometimes the outcome isn't happening right away. It might take a few weeks or it might take a few months before the outcome happens. So this is a nice way to transition it. Now let's look at some examples for lesson. Then came my aha moment, or here's what I learned. This is a great way to set up what lesson I learned without actually giving the lesson away. Or you can actually give it away by saying, by being honest, I was able to grow my business. Here, I give you what the lesson is, so it's clear what it is, and then I'm going to go into detail and elaborate. Now for conclusion, here are some great examples of headlines. This is where you want to tie the lesson to the audience. What does it mean for you? Take a look at the first couple, for example. Which brings me to you, or here's how I can help. It ties up the lesson perfectly into what can I do for you. The next two examples are perfect for a teacher. Now I'm going to share them with you. Or it worked for me, but will it work for you? Basically, we're talking about, here's the lesson that I learned. Now I'm going to teach you how to do it too. The last one is, I'm here to tell you money can buy happiness. This is a great example because it has that emphasis that we talked about. I capitalized the word can, so people know that that's where to put the emphasis. Also, we're breaking that myth. If you had a strong myth from the premise part of your story or the hook part of your story, this is where you can conclude it by saying, see, here's the truth. So try to come up with your headlines. An easy way to do this is to have a headline in front of each of the 6 parts of your story. Open up your workbook to exercise 13, headlines, and write down the headlines that you want to use. One good way to test the headlines is to only read the headlines and see if you get the gist of the story and it makes you want to read the rest. Let me show you the headlines that I came up with for my story. Remember, you want to be able to quickly scroll through the page and read only the headlines and see if they make sense. The difference between good and great design. I'm not cut out to be an entrepreneur. I was a month away from being broke. 2 weeks later, I got a text message from Leslie. Being a bad entrepreneur was my superpower. So what does it take to go from good to great? As you can see there, just by quickly reading my headlines, you can get a gist of the story. The story is about how you can get a great website, how I was a bad entrepreneur, and at the end, how I found out that that has something to do with great websites. Now go ahead and write your own headlines in the workbook. Now that you've written your headlines, in the next lesson, I'm going to teach you how to test readability.